So I wanted to create a Mobius strip in Wings 3D, and I sort of did, and then I created something else which was rather interesting. So that's what we're going to look at here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to start with a torus, but I'm going to use this control here on the right of torus, which brings up this dialog that allows me to set certain things. So I want 4 sections and 4 slices, which gives us a very crude torus. And now I'm going to choose this edge here, so it's an edge on one of the corners, and press L to get to the edge loop, and I'm going to rotate that round 45 degrees clockwise. So it's going to rotate on this axis, the X axis, so right click, rotate X, move the mouse freely, well, it will show me which is clockwise, and then I just hold the shift key down until I've got 45 degrees. The number in the top left hand corner will tell you. Don't pay much attention to its sign, you just want everything to be clockwise, so just look at it and see that it is. Left click to set that, turn the shape round, base to deselect everything, select the next edge along, press loop, right click, rotate. This is going to be on the Z axis now, so select Z, find out which is clockwise, move the mouse around 45 and then move it around 90. Right, move around the object now, edge selection, select the edge, press L for loop, right click, rotate. We're back on the X axis now, but the sign's going to go in the other direction because we're looking from the other direction. So select the X axis, work out which is clockwise, go around 45, 90, 135 is the next step. This last corner is a little bit tricky because we've got to split it in half so we can rotate this side independently. So use edge selection and loop, and edge selection and loop on these opposite corners, right click, loop cut, so we're just temporarily cutting this shape in half. Then still looking from this direction, it's important because we need the edges on this side of the cut. Select the 4 edges independently. You can't use loop anymore because it's no longer forming a loop because we've cut the shape. So we just need to select them from this direction, which is a little bit fiddly, and then once that's done, right click, rotate. It's going to be on Z, and then just check you can turn it over. Then use the shift key to do it in discrete steps. So that's 90, 180. That's given us our complete 180 degree shift round the entire shape. If it's been done exactly, we can select both halves of the shape, right click and weld them together. The corners will light up red to show they've been welded together, and that's the first step. Now, I know it's not exactly a Mobius strip yet because it's got depth, but it's going to be a 3D object, so it's going to have depth. If you have purely 2-dimensional objects, things can go a bit wonky anyway. So what I'm going to do is now select one of these inner edges, and then if I press the G key a couple of times, you'll see it's selected all the edges along one sort of Mobius strip. So if this is going to be the thicker side, so if I right click and scale uniform, I can set how thick that side of the strip is going to be. Hold the shift key down to give exact values, and I'm using 500%. Now at this stage, if I select the entire object and smooth it a couple of 3 times, you can see that I have got this Mobius strip shape. If I want to go back to where I was, more than one Control Z, undo step, do Control Z and hold the Alt key down, and then press the Z, and you can go back a step at a time. Okay, so that now has taken me back to where I was. I'm going to select on one of these short edges, press G, and then select face. I'm going to use the mirror command to mirror this up into a much more complex shape. So use mirror, and all of those sides get mirrored, and we get this rather interesting but complicated looking shape. And now, if I select this entire shape and smooth it down, I see it's quite interesting. So I've smoothed it twice now, and you'll note from this angle there's a couple of these areas where the lines are crossing, and I'm going to use these as a guide to create some more shapes from the shapes. So if I select here and here, these are lines that run out along the edge of the shape and continue all over it as it happens. These ones that run into the middle don't. So there's all those 8 lines there, and only 2 of them, well 4 of them are of interest. And if you press loop now, you can see that extends across its surface. And if I select face, right click and shell extrude, I can form another individual shape off this surface. Don't form it too thick because it has a peculiar effect, which you will see. So if I just form that now, then you might see some little spikes coming out of here if I made it too thick. And then I can use this geometry graph to hide different parts of the model, for example, so you can see what it looks like on its own. Which is quite a complicated looking shape, quite interesting I think. So if you want the geometry graph up, use window command, and you'll see there's the options there to switch these things on if you want them. So geometry graph like that and outline, you can just switch them on using that command. select that entire shape. I'm going to smooth it a couple of times so it's nice and smooth, and then I'm going to switch that shape off and switch this one back on. For visibility, go to the other side and select the corresponding lines there, and I'm going to loop those round, and I'm going to bevel those just to show you there's another option there, and then I could shell extrude that to get a different shape coming out in the other direction. You see this spike that's formed? That's obviously bad geometry. Now if I smooth, that might disappear. You can see that's forming a sort of different sort of shape, and so if I switch the other one I had and switch the middle section off, I can now have these two shapes together. Now I was saying about using the Control Z key. Well, if I didn't like that, I can just do Control Z and it'll take me back. So until I go back and I didn't form that bad geometry. So instead I'll smooth this entire shape down a couple of times so I've got a smaller region in this middle, and then I'll select those opposite ones, do that again, and then I've got that shape, and I'll shell extrude that to form another shape. I'll make that a bit thicker and see if anything fun is happening. Oh, a little one there, we'll not worry too much. And then I'll smooth that down a couple of times like so, and then I'll switch my other bit back into visibility, and you can see now I've got a few different things running together. I don't know whether it's going to look better with any particular one of these. I could just do those two on their own, for example, either running around each other. That looks quite an interesting shape, or I could have this one in as if I can switch it back on again. Come on, thank you. It's getting a bit sluggish because the model's getting complicated. I could have that one in like a glass-like material and these two in solid materials. My only slight concern with including this one is that the surfaces may be touching one another ever so slightly, in which case sometimes that upsets the render engines. So if I get a hold of that middle shape, just press space to deselect everything, what I could do is very carefully use the extrude key on this faces and slightly shrink the model, but it has to be done very carefully because you can see those spikes coming out of the surface there. Those would be bad. I could shrink them down so there's only very slightly smaller, so you can see if the spikes are there it must be reduced slightly, and you can see the value on the left. And as long as I've made it slightly smaller than the other bits, then the surfaces won't collide exactly and it'll probably render okay. So I could probably have all three of those components. So there you go. That was it's created quite an interesting shape. We'll give it a render and see how it looks for the examples, and it's not taken that long, and it seems to be made up of lots of different kind of Mobius surfaces, so it could be quite a nice thing to render and look at. So there you go. That's the end of the tutorial really. I hope you'll have a go at producing one of these shapes yourself, or experimenting with this idea in Wings 3D, and use it in one of your own renderers, whatever that happens to be. I think I'm going to try Bryce and Octane in these examples. Now if I'm doing that, I'll just point out for those using these bits of software, it's a good idea to assign different materials. So right click on material when you've got the faces selected, and I'll give it a new material, okay, and then I'll give another one a new material, so I just select a different one, right click and right click on material, and I'll call that one new material 2, and give that a different colour so I can tell the difference, I suppose. Okay, and then I should have a material for each different component, so I'll be able to separate it out in Octane, and Bryce is pretty good. It recognises individual objects when they're exported from Wings 3D, and I don't really have that problem, but there you go. Right, so that's the end of the video, and like I say, hope you found that interesting.